Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime on my Media Prime. This evening, we are going to be asking the question as to why national and internationally funded projects fail in Africa. We have seen many of them being announced. Some of them are implemented fully, but yet fail to satisfactorily meet the needs of the people or meet the aspirations of those who actually doled out money for this project. We are going to be looking at reasons why some of these projects are not successful with our panelists who are in the house already. Professor Mark Anthony is a Panafricanist who has been following up most of these projects. We are glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Mr. Leo, and to my fellow panelists. It is a blessed evening, and certainly we will be discussing further into this topic and learning together. Thank you.
We also in the company of Mr. Is it Mr. or Pastor? Mr. Elijah Enoaku. Yes, I don't know.
That's fine.
Yes. He is an international project expert, implementation expert, all the way from the United States of America?
Canada.
Okay, you're from Canada, to discuss on this very, very important topic. We're glad to have you for the first time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Prof, and thank you, Leo.
Okay, you came from Canada and you're enjoying your stay in Cameroon?
Yes, enjoying my stay. Cameroon is home to me, and it's good to be back home, to see what's happening back home, and to look at some of the projects that we're going to be discussing today.
Were you scared that you were going to be kidnapped?
I was concerned. To be honest with you, I am not going to the Southwest. I am not going to the Northwest. I'm going to do my research in Douala, and I will contact some people in the Northwest and Southwest. My security is not guaranteed, so I wouldn't be going there.
You're afraid? You don't want to pay ransom?
I hope it doesn't come to that, but I wouldn't be going there.
Yes, so you are in Cameroon for research, in Africa for research. What are you researching on?
Yes, I'm a PhD student in mechanical engineering at Leeds University in the United States, even though I live in Canada. I live and work in Canada. So at the time of deciding what I'm going to finally focus on, we work together with my professor, and they look at my background and say, you are from Africa. And we've been having this challenge of actually understanding how projects are being implemented. And there've been a lot of research work on projects failing. And we came to a conclusion that we should investigate and understand why projects fail in Africa.
Okay.
Whether they're international projects, United Nations funded projects, World Bank funded projects, or national projects. They have the same symptoms when it comes to failure. So that's what I'm working on right now. We're going to be working on sub-Saharan Africa. I might be going to Uganda. I've done some work in Nigeria, Ivory Coast as well. But like they say, charity begins at home, so I had to come home and start from there.
Okay. We also are going to be discussing with Mr. Gana. He is the CEO of Develop Africa. Good evening and welcome, Mr. Gana.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening to the panelists. Thank you for having me again. I'm very glad to be in your panel.
I'll start with you. You live in Uganda. You've seen some of these projects, World Bank funded projects, UNGP, and a host of others, nationally funded projects also. Can you understand why most of them are not 100% successful?
First of all, Mr. Leo, thank you for giving me this opportunity to start from Uganda. Number one, either a national or international project financed by UN or UNDP or any international organization, is that those projects are not even meant to succeed. Let me tell you why. Because they are giving us the project that is not matching with the demand of the people in Africa. They are doing some project without taking consideration of the geographical aspect, the social political aspect, the cultural aspect. They are not even talking about the weather. You can see the similar projects people are doing in South Africa. They want to implement the same project in Cameroon. It's not going to work. The system is not the same. The economic is not the same. You can't take the project in Niger as you say you want to implement it in Kenya. The system is very different. So at the end of the day, when you find out that many projects are not working because, first of all, our leaders don't have a clear vision of what kind of project they want to implement and sit down with the international organization to tell them exactly this is the problem we are facing in specific areas, and this is the way these people are behaving, this is their level of education, and this also is their cultural system that we need to take into consideration to match it and to make sure that when we implement the project can be successful. Sometimes they are just, let me give you an example. You can't take a project of Southwest or Northwest and you say you want to do it in Fano province. In my province, it's totally different. Nothing can match. Our culture, our weather, everything is different. So without taking on consideration those aspects, it's hindering the development of many African countries. And as we all know, the majority of those international organizations who are implementing those projects, their agenda behind is funded by either by IMF, World Bank, maybe the Bretton Woods institution, or sometimes they are funded by Paris Club. You know, to give some political condition to our government that at the end of the day is not going to work. We need to make sure that we have a system that any geographical location in Africa well studied in order to implement the project, Mr. Leo. The project is not about money. The project is not about documentation sitting with the government. The project is the system of implementation and the follow-up. The level in education on these different African countries play a bigger role on the understanding even of the project when we want to make it work. But we don't have all those things. We sit down with a lot of people who speak big grammars in English, tell you about billion, how they come from this thing they did in America or Latin America. That is the difficulty we are going through, Mr. Leo.
Okay.
Back to you.
Okay. Professor Mark Anthony, from what he is saying, the core issue now has to do with not doing enough feasibility study to ensure that these projects are adapted to the realities of the respective communities in Africa.
You know, when you look at the way they describe it, they call it sub-Saharan Africa. Mm-hmm. They believe that everywhere in sub-Saharan Africa is the same. And with that kind of mindset, you are already entering into failure. And you see, if you look at the failures, you discover that we have structural failures and functional failures in the implementation of these their projects. Mm-hmm. I remember in 1971, when there's this project funded by, I think, the World Bank in Kenya, the Takuna Lake project, which was, it had an intention, a very good intention, but they did not realize those who were living around the place. Around that lake, if you notice very well, those who live around the Neolithic areas, they are mostly, let me use the word, pastoral and nomadic persons. And you want them to become professional fishermen. Mm-hmm. This is what happens. They will not get involved in that. Mm-hmm. That project failed, though $22 million was invested in it. It failed because the people of that particular environment look at those who fish as poor people. Mm-hmm. But the World Bank was funding a project to instead make them become, according to them, they thought we were trying to empower them to become wealthy. but none of them would like to become fishers when they are looking at them as poor persons. So they took their money, put in the wrong project. And why they invested that money, the project doesn't end up fruitful. The same thing is happening in several African countries, where you end up seeing might be computers that have been locked up in a particular environment where there is no person who have access to it. You get into an environment where English books have been closed up in a particular library where nobody is reading because there's no English language in that area. And so you end up discovering that their projects are not actually targeting the people.
They did not do enough feasibility study.
Yes, they have a mindset of, okay, let's go help. That's not the way they help people. You help people based on what they are going through. You don't hear, then you step in to help. You must be able to help from within. And also we have a problem of, we have, individuals who are leading most of these projects. Let me say, for example, a project is supposed to be implemented in Cameroon. It needs to go through the government. And if it needs to go through the government needs to sanction it, then it gets executed. I think that the persons who are supposed to be good advisors, the government should have insight on the people living in that particular area. And if the government can't tell this organization that is coming to sponsor that project is not good for that environment,
no.
It's simply because, Mr. Liu, let me step in there. It's simply because most of them, they want the money. And because of greed and corruption, they are willing to take the money, knowing very well that when the money comes, they are going to cut it. It will not fulfill the purpose. So they allow the projects to come. They know it will not work. So they'll squander the money.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to ask you, Mr. Elijah. Is that not also where the problem is? How do some of these projects in Africa get funded? Are there applications from some quarters in Africa who say, we have this need and please, can you help fund it? And then monies are given to persons to fund projects that may not actually be needed by the respective communities.
Yeah, I think I agree with Prof and a colleague in Uganda. I did not, at this stage, we're doing data gathering. I don't have a conclusive statement at this stage. That would be premature for me to say this is this. But I do agree with some of the trends that we are seeing. From listening to two of them, I realized that there is lack of stakeholder engagement from what they have said. That's the data we are seeing. We've gathered data from a few other countries. I'm just trying to be on the ground to talk to people actually. So we are seeing that trend as well, that people we talk to complain that they were not consulted or sufficiently consulted on what their needs are. They believe that their needs are A, B, C, and they told them that you're going to help them with those needs. So there's that lack of stakeholder engagement as well, because even when you're doing feasibility studies, I'm coming from Canada, for example. I do not know the look. I'm from this country, no doubt about that. But I don't really know the local realities that exist at this time after living out for a very long time. I don't know that. But if I engage the local community and say, okay, what do you want? And then we sit down, we have a discussion on what they want, and we bring our own technical expertise. And the second thing that Prof and the other colleague mentioned, which is very important that we're seeing as well, is that a lot of the project managers are foreigners, and they do not understand local realities. And when they're implementing that project, at the back of their mind, they believe they're doing their utmost best. But from the data we are seeing, it's not conclusive so far, because one of the things that I'm working on is to come up with a model and say, okay, if the project is going to be funded, it has to go through these gate passes, A, B, C, D. When it goes through the gate passes, based on what people say, or based on what we realize, then it can be funded. So yes, I agree that we are seeing data that seems to support what they have said, that there is lack of stakeholder engagement in a lot of the projects that are being implemented.
Yes, but funding has been going on for forever. Since our independence, we have these guys funding projects. And I was asking you, how do these projects get funded? Who applies for money, or the World Bank, or whosoever?
I'll give you an example. Let's bring an example that hits back home. The Cameroon Pipeline Project.
Yes.
The World Bank saw that there's a lot of oil within the basin, within the Chad and Cameroon, and then got Cameroon and Chad together and said, if we fund this project, it's going to astronomically increase the standard of living of the people. What was the strategy? The strategy was that, okay, if we agree to what we're going to do, there was an agreement between the Cameroon government and the Chadian government that the money should be used, the trickle-down effect, that was the agreement in a nutshell. When the World Bank sees that they're not, because what is their desire? Their desire is that they want to see the local population lifted out of poverty, right? So they would normally go in for that. But at the end of it, what happened? The late president of Chad, after the project has been going on, decided to use the money to buy weapons, and the World Bank pulled out. So the strategy here was faulty, from what I understand. I've been looking at that project for a long time now. It seems really, really problematic. Right now, I would call that project an abandoned project at this stage. So, yes, the World Bank does look at what the population is presenting, what their needs are, but sometimes the strategy around it is very fluffy.
Yeah, but the World Bank, have they not been, not only the World Bank, other institutions, have they not been monitoring what is happening to actually be able to get down there and understand the actual needs of the people? For example, he raised the issue of investing around a lake for a population that were a cattle rearing population. Prof, that's what you said? Yes. So how do you take time to train these people to get interested in fishing, and then how do you turn people who naturally are into an activity? Because I've seen some of these projects implemented in Cameroon.
You are very right. I wish I could answer a World Bank question. Since I'm doing this project in order to help them, I wish I was an insider within the World Bank to understand how they really go into taking doing a project like that for people who are not even fishermen, because that's a complete failure right from the onset. Even though from a technical perspective, one of the things that we're trying to do is to broaden the whole perspective of a project success or a project failure. Because from a technical perspective, they'll tell you that if it meets the cost, the schedule, and the timeline, and delivers, that's all it is. It's a success. But within African context, we have to broaden that. That's one of the things we're working on.
Okay. Mr. Gana, is it also because there are people who are specialized in the West to raise money? They have raised enough money and are looking for where they can dump the money, whatever the money is used for. Because I've seen projects that are funded with the intention to get people away from doing hunting, and you say you want to train them to get into rearing goats, pigs, and the rest. How do you actually ensure that these persons that we are training are going to be able to produce enough meat to meet the needs of an entire community? Are we not just splashing money because there is money somewhere that needs to be wasted?
First of all, Leo, we need to agree on one thing. You can take someone out of the ghetto, but it's going to be difficult to take the ghetto out of his mind. This is the first problem we have in Africa here. You can't take a hunter and tomorrow you can make him a truck driver. You know that he will make a lot of blunder, Mr. Leo. Not because you have money, you want to change. It's not a machine. Human being is a paradigm. And to change this paradigm, we need to have a strategy at least to build a system that can move them out of the old paradigm and bring the new one. The issue is not about the money. The issue is how to implement the project successfully. Can you hear me? Right?
Yeah, we're getting you.
The implementation of the project, yes, the implementation of the project will define how well it was designed from day one. Because the majority of the project in Africa, you will hear a lot of billions, but at the end of the day, those billions will never get to the grassroots. If you hear that they are funding $20 million, don't be surprised to find out there's not even $1 million on the ground on the real project, because there is a lot of people involved that they need their part of share, that things cannot go, number one. And number two, they did not plan a long-term planning to make sure that if we want to divert this community from their main activity and to teach them to build a new one, it takes time because they need proper support. And this support is not there. You can't just arrive today, you say that you want to bring a tea, you want to plant a tea from, you take a tea from now Northwest to take it to Fano province. It will never work, Mr. Leo. That is the truth. There is no way you take people from Fano province, you convert them as a tea farmers. Today, it will take you minimum 50 years for them to use the tea. But if you take people from Bamenda, you teach them how to plant tea, this is their culture. They know how to do it very easily. We have to make sure that we study the paradigm of these people first. There is a system you need to put on those humans to understand that they are shifting their paradigm from this project to the other one. And how? By holding them back, by funding them on it, not on the basis of this project, but you have to maintain their living, the style of living. Because anything you want to put on human, if you do not change his style of living, it cannot work. You bring a project, you say that you are bringing a project to computerize people in the village, but these people in the village, sometimes they have water problem or they have electricity problem. How can you teach them a computer if the basic are not neat? Some people cannot even feed themselves. You are teaching him how to code. It's not going to work, Mr. Leo. The difficulties we are having right now, we are not involving the local community to understand their need. Sometimes there is an urgent need in this community needed to be fixed in order now to bring back their sanity and to let them know that this is the new way we are going to move forward. But we come with a system, we tell them, no, this is 1, 2, 3, and when we are going to pump money. And our leaders sit down, go to TV, sign document, and start saying that we put the project in this region, this amount of money, and that is what we are doing. A lot of those things need to be properly. I can give you an example. When you study China, I have taken my time to visit many regions in China to study the poverty alleviation program before starting my company, Develop Africa. How I get to understand that Chinese government put any specific project on any region in China have to be according with their political system, with the ethnic group, with their religion, have to go with the weather, it have to go with the geographic, it have to completely be in harmony with the life of those people before they implement the project. You cannot take a project whose destiny to Northwest and you put it in Fano province. That is what we are doing in Africa. And at the end of the day, you find out that those projects, they are not meant even to help the population, but those international community has put in their mileage, to give us some condition, either in political system or either in liberalization, either sometimes they need the countries to tighten a belt, or sometimes they need even the devaluation of the country. That's why they bring the project, they say, we support you in this area. But those areas are not necessary. You can't tell me that every year they are sinking. In Cameroon alone, if you find out a year, those international community are putting the project minimum $400 million. But do you think those projects, if you evaluate them at the end of the project, they can value 1 million? No, Mr. Leo. So a proper system have to be set by we Africans to tell them this is our problem. If you ask me today in Fano province, in my area, in my district, I will let you know that this is the special problem we are facing. If you empower me, I will make sure that I eradicate the problem and can make sure I lift the people out of poverty. But if you ask me now, Mr. Gana, to go to Northwest, it's going to be difficult for me because I don't know the system. I don't know their main problem. This is the difficulties we are facing, Mr. Leo. Back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gana. Don't we also think that it's also an issue of sustainability? where maybe the funding bodies, they think that once the first phase is done, they leave and hoping that it will grow, not knowing that it takes time. He talked about there is a possibility of moving people, shifting their direction across 50 years to be able to. True. But now a project is realized first, second and third year, and then the funding is cut and the people go back to their old ways and the project becomes useless.
Yeah, Mr. Lee, you're talking on, I'm trying to pick out some examples of such projects that have failed like that.
Okay.
When you go back to Mozambique in early 2000, there's a project that Playpom actually instituted, which their intent was to establish 4,000 taps around Africa that can take care of about 10 million Africans. And if you follow that particular project, you realize that as early as 2000, I think 2006, by 2006, the project was already failing. The money was pumped into it. In Mozambique, when that happened, the locals, where the pump was established in their village, came out and said they did not consult them before changing their way of pulling water, because they used to pull. So they are not interested in it. And you know what? It died. And go round Cameroon, you discover that there are huge taps that have been abandoned. Why? The truth is that the people do not have the capacity to continue with what was given to them at that early age. They don't have the money to keep on. Because most of the times when these projects are established, like you just mentioned, they end up saying, okay, the community will continue with it. You never consulted us. You cut us out. You dealt with the government. And when we talk of the government, if you come to the African situation, you realize that we have young politics in Africa, where there is still bottleneck and cutthroat politics that is happening, where if a project is to come, instead of bringing stakeholders across the board, it becomes a party political issue, where they look at individuals from the party who can enjoy the money. And so they get in there, they forget the people who are concerned. They cut them completely out. And you bring a project hoping that tomorrow these people are going to continue with what? You do not give them the money. Maybe if they consulted them, they will tell them this is the way we want it to be done. And when you present it to them, they will say, okay, this person has been doing this for us. We believe that he can best manage it. And if that happens, you have a result, you have results. But look at it. You just come, you impose it on them, and they will tell them to continue. Continue what? The thing will die. Natural death as time is progressing. And that is what has been happening across Africa. You realize that most of these projects, we will come back saying the same thing. The persons who are actually concerned are sidelined. And you cannot come to do something for me without finding out what I really need. You don't impose what you think that I need. You must ask me what I need. And maybe you take a process, and you see the problem with most of these international funded projects is the fact that they have their applications, how they call the apps now, that they have arranged in Europe, and they use the same apps to measure. They think that it is all that processes that manage the affairs. No. I want to say that if these guys need to succeed, at times they need to give up most of these their processes, allow the thing to be local. When it's done from a local direction, you will see results, because it will be done by the people, for the people. And at the end of the day, they will know it is their thing. As long as they see it as their thing, they will fully get involved in it. And you realize that even the budget that was actually voted to, or maybe the race to sponsor such a project, will not, in fact, the project will be realized without using all that amount of money.
But those who are mobilizing the funds, they have worked so hard to raise that, they also need to give out the money. Eh?
Mr. Leo, that is what I am saying, that at the end of the day, if you have given the money, The people who worked so hard to get it, they'll get their share and they'll feel free.
Okay.
If only they can allow it in the hands of the locals. Let the locals do the development work. And once they establish it as their project, you don't need to come and tell them that they need to go follow it up. I'll use Babanki as an example. In Big Babanki, to be called Babanki Kijomkeku, there was a project that guys actually lobbied for to establish taps around the village. But when the guys came in, they went met the chief would send them to the quarters. Every member of the family in different quarters in the village was actually consulted concerning the tap. Everybody was happy. And they took it like their project. You know what? They were the ones building the reservoirs for the water. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, after they built the catchments, every home received a tap. Not to talk of just the quarter. When the quarters received the pipes coming up, they shared it went to homes. And people were willing to be donating every year to maintain that tap. And as we are talking, it's still there.
That's the sustainability we're talking about. Is that not what is lacking?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point about sustainability, because they are the case that he just mentioned, the data that I've been going through, that seems to stand out as one of the cardinal points. There was a project that happened in South Africa. I also looked at the project in Mozambique. It's on my table as well. I've been going through the paperwork as well. Doing that one. There was a project in South Africa during the World Cup. Mm-hmm. The South African government bought a range of long buses, and their intention was that they will use those buses for the World Cup, transport people and all whatnot. And after that, they're going to, use the buses for commercial purposes and then industrialize the town. Millions, we're talking about millions. Mm-hmm. And the consequences of, if that project succeeded, would have been massive. So after the World Cup, behold, the government didn't then realize that there were no roads. Mm-hmm. Those are long buses. We're not talking about these 70-seaters. Mm-hmm. There were no roads for those buses. Those buses only, roll around the airport that was constructed for that purposes. And as we are speaking today, those buses have been packed. So it goes back to the issue of sustainability when you're building a project. There wasn't sustainability built into that. And most of the projects that I've been going through that have failed, that is one of the points. You do projects in Africa and you tell
the people that, okay, immediately it is realized, you take over. Yeah.
And sometimes the people are not trained to actually handle the project and maintain it. Let me make this statement here. Even though we're talking about international project, but I'm also looking at national projects as well. Because we've seen a lot of issues with national funded projects that have been failing woefully. And gentlemen, this is something that trickled my heart, because when we're looking at this, we're looking at the rate of project failures in the world. Africa has a whopping 70% failure rate. Yeah. Cameroon has a whopping 75% failure rate of projects. That's to tell you, when I sit on the table with my other researchers, we are looking at something that concerns Africa. It pains my heart. So this is something that I feel really deeply about it, that if we can work with the local population and present something to the United or to the funders and say, this is what the people are saying in terms of the project that we are funding. This is what they want. This is what they would like to be involved in. It will go a long way, because like Prof said, sometimes we have this technical definition of projects that it should meet schedule, time, and performance. But the local realities is that people are not looking at those technical things when they're looking for a project that is going to satisfy their need. There was a project in Nigeria that I want to just mention here that was a huge success, but the investment was very little. Wow. What was that project? They installed solar panels, I think somewhere around Jos. I just started researching that one. They installed solar panel around Jos. As they installed that solar panel, there were local engineers, Nigerian engineers, that were around there, living around there, and they knew everything, and they trained them on how to handle those solar panels and maintain them. As I'm speaking to you now, that place is like a Silicon Valley. That town has blossomed. There are industries coming. There is always power. There's always electricity. You know, everything runs on power. So once you get the basics of what the people need, a lot of things will build on that. So this is something that is very dear to our heart, and I think that, you know, hopefully we can come up with a preamble that we can present to these guys to say, this is what the people are saying. Let's work based on what they want, their needs. So that sustainability, like you mentioned, it's a very critical one that's coming up on the list. Again, it's going to be a simulation. What I'm doing, I'm going to run a model, a simulation, and say, these projects have to go through these gate passes. If it doesn't go through these gate passes, based on what the people want, please don't go ahead. Don't go ahead.
Okay.
That's what I'm working on.
Let's look at it from the national perspective, Mr. Gana. You are also very observant on what is happening out there in Uganda. You are also very versed with what obtains in Cameroon. What could justify that most, like he says, he's giving a 75%
failure for Cameroon,
yeah,
and 70% for Africa as a
What
whole.
would justify this when we know that these are national projects funded from our national budget, implemented by either Ugandans or Cameroonians?
We are having poor network.
Do you get me now?
We are having poor network.
Yeah,
Can I hear you?
Yeah, I was asking what would account for the very dismal performance of projects implementations in Africa by African governments. I was using the example of Uganda. You must be versed with what obtains out there, and in Cameroon. These are projects that are funded by our national budgets and also executed by nationals. Why would they not succeed? Is it also the fact that they are not aware of the local realities?
First of all, Mr. Leo, there is lack of proper planning in our area in Africa by our government, considering that even the demographical aspect in Africa has played a biggest role, but many countries find themselves surprised after 20 years with the boom of demographic without having proper planning how to accommodate the population. This is number one. This is the biggest mistake we did. Number two, without even planning our economical system for the next 10, 20 or 30 years to see how the country can sustain some kind of project to make sure that when the project are implemented, they want also to be sustained for a certain period of time to make sure that the population can take over it. And number three, there is also our bad leadership. I can assure you that the majority of our African leaders, they don't have a clear vision for their country. They just are elected as a leader, but they can't tell you exactly where they want to take their country for the next 5 years, the next 10 years. The example has been seen from Tanzania. Magufuli has run the country for 6 years, but what he realized in 6 years, 4 of the past president has not realized it because he came with a clear agenda and he also communicated his agenda to his team that this is what we want to take our population with the consent of the people also by asking them what is the priority. But the difficulties we are having with our national project, number one, sometimes the projects are also imposed by us. Just maybe a leader or a political leader in your area or any region can just go and fight for the development in the capital just to bring for you to show that he's doing something. But at the end of the day, the project is not even needed. So if the population don't need the project, mean the implementation is going to be very poor. Sometimes also you can that the budget for the implementation of those national projects are not matching. Even though when you see sometimes when they build some bridge or they did some road in our areas in any part of African country, you find out that the job is poorly done because the budget has not been sufficient because some of the people have got the project. So those difficulties happen in many different countries. I travel around Africa to see that the system of implementation of the national project has not been really properly designed. Imagine that you are implementing a project for just 5 years, and for the next, after 5 years, the project will disappear. But after 10 years, you find out that the population in the area has doubled. So this project will never have any impact. I give you an example. When there was building the road, Yaoundé Douala, they never have a provision in 2020 that this road will be obsolete. But look at the difficulty people are having today. The traffic is very high. The cars are very many. People are many, but the provision was not there. But any developed country, when they want to do a national project, they say, if you want to build this road, is this road will be sustainable for the next 100 years? Is this road can be really operative for the next 100 years? But we are building project for 5 or 10 years, Mr. Leo. Those difficulties are hindering us in many African countries. We do the project for just 5 years, and after 5 years, the project is no more important. We have to come back again to do it. The developed country have a planning. What is our planning for the next 50 years? What is the population we will have for the next 50 years? Either we are talking about power, infrastructure, if we are talking about education. Any project you think is national one, when you find out the majority have difficulties to sustain it, more than 10 years is not there, Mr. Liu. Back to you.
Yes, very apt. We fail to see beyond the time that was set for the project realization.
Yeah, I think he mentioned something that in project management we call change management. I see that with local projects. I haven't done a lot of data scouting all around the place, but the few local projects that I've seen, there's a problem there, what you just mentioned. We have a 35-year development project plan. I'll give you an example of where I'm coming from. In Canada, the government has a plan for energy. And Canada is an oil-producing country, for example. But the government has realized that there is so much push right now for electric cars. So what have they done? They have remodified the 30-year plan to win the country away from oil and gas, because they know that within the short while, we're going to go to electric cars. And if you still have your plan on developing combustion engine, where are you going to be selling them on that? So you do what? You manage your plan, your 35-year plan. The Cameroon, I shouldn't say Cameroon as well, it's an African problem. Within the African sector, they have those kind of 5 years, 6 years, and they keep going like he's saying. There was no planning on that road that, oh, the population is going to explode, and you build a road that is 2 lane on one side. Now the population has exploded. What do? There's no risk modeling, there is no change management. All these projects that we talk, all these things that we talk about is killing African projects. I see that a lot. I read about a project, I just going through a project from Ghana. The Ghanaian government has a project to build 200,000 houses to alleviate the standard of living and, help the population and bring them out of poverty. They went into an agreement with the government of this university in Ghana that came out with a project and timelines and everything. And they said they could do the project for 21 million something. Now, a Korean company came in and said they could do it for 5 million. When they came in and said they could do it for 5 million, they gave the project to them. Within the space of 2 years, that project failed. Why? These people failed to manage change. And they went for the lowest cost. I don't know whether I don't have the data to prove that there was corruption or whatever happens. It's possible. Corruption is a big factor in project management. But again, local projects do not foresee beyond 2 years, 3 years what's going to happen. That difficulty of managing change and things that happen along the way, they're not able to manage their risk. So projects fail as well, even the local ones. So that's something I'm seeing on all the few projects that have been looked at so far, not just international projects.
Yeah, but national projects are implemented by nationals themselves.
You would think.
That's the way we are supposed to do it.
No, we have seen roads that are constructed by national construction companies. For example, let me use the case of the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Cameroon. We had routes that were done by Arab contractors. That is an Egyptian company that came to Cameroon. Those routes are still intact. But all the routes that were done by local contractors, not only him and another, they're broken.
Okay, maybe let's get to that. Let's use Boya as an example because we are talking about Boya here, using the examples you just quoted.
Yeah, we are not calling names here.
Okay, okay. When we look at the contracts that were given to locals, you realize that the end result was, in fact, you have poor execution of the project. So what is the cause? What's the reason for that poor execution? You realize that most of the times when projects like that need to be done, administration plays a lot. Before the project is handed to this local, he needs to agree with terms.
He has to lobby with many persons.
Yes, during the lobbying, now he needs to agree with a lot of terms which he was not even supposed to. And at times, he needs to swallow very hot, let me use cocoyam, down his throat, which he knows very well he will not be able to realize. But for the sake of getting the contract, he accepts things he's not supposed to accept. And so when he takes the project to execute, what do you expect? A road that normally you are supposed to do a road and you have more than 3 codings. But they do 1 coding and you say the road has been done. That's not a road. The moment cars start running on it, the code comes out. And that is exactly what happened with Chariot. With the company, local company that took the contract in Boya. And that is what is happening in many areas.
But we cannot confirm that is what exactly what happened because we are not technicians.
Okay, at this point,
Yes.
Mr. Leo, I am analyzing on what I have experienced on the ground.
Maybe
I
they
am
work
looking
according to the terms of reference that
we cannot. There are certain things that maybe I might not be able to prove them. But when you look at the job on the ground, at least I was there in Boya. I saw the road. Even when the construction was done, we asked, can this really last? Because it was 1 coding.
Yeah, maybe the budget was small.
But that is what I'm saying. But do you think that there was not enough budget that was given? What happened that the Arab construction did theirs and it succeeded well?
Okay.
Theirs was successful.
Yeah, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we continue with our discussions out here.
There's nothing more magical than spending good times with the family during the holidays. So, join Canal Plus and let's spend the holidays together. To welcome you, the decoder is 5,000 francs and installation offered with many channels.
Ça sera la musique ou rien.
C'est tout.
What to love?
Nous avons un duel Afrique de l'Ouest, Afrique centrale.
Dance and ignite your evenings. Share strong moments full of twists and turns. And even make the younger ones dream.
Passage en vitesse, Mac Noël. Tout est prêt pour qu'on profite de
Nothing kill my vibe. I see you watching my stories. I see you getting my lifestyle. I see you watching my movements. This bad bitch bad every day. I know they look at your face. Bad man bad every day. Get on your knees and pray. Do you regain your faith?
Apostle and Reverend Mrs. Ngwa invite you to a 5-day program, Feast of the Tabernacle, from the 24th to the 28th of November 2021, under the theme, Provoking the Sworn Blessings. Guest ministers, Minister Gashin Mia, Minister Eta, Reverend Paul Tom, Dr. Rogers Fogwe, and host Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa, Reverend Ann Ngwa. Venue, Church Auditorium, Antia Road, Bonaberry, located at the Afrigas filling station, 200 meters from the road. Be there and provoke the blessings of God upon your life.
Welcome back. You're watching Prime on my Media Prime. We're looking at reasons why project execution in Cameroon, in Uganda, in Africa has been very, very poor. We are also suggesting, I'm sure at the end of the program, ways for us to, when we discuss them, we are already making proposals on ways of making things better so that Africa can aptly reflect what it should be. Mr. Gana, we are talking about the poor execution rates for projects in Africa, in Cameroon, for example, where these projects are being received by government officials in charge. How do we understand this? Because each year, money is set aside for the implementation or realization of projects. Who receives these projects?
First of all, there is a corruption involved in this situation, Mr. Leo, because you can't see after voting a budget for a project, but at the end of the day, you see the project is poorly executed, because we find out that there is a lot of channels where this the funding for the project have to go through, that everyone have to take his share. At the end of the day, when we come to the execution, we find out there is enough money. There is not enough money, and those companies have to do whatever they do at least to cover the project ongoing. Number one, there is we don't have an adequate team that can follow the project from the beginning to the end to make sure that at the end of the day, the project has been well executed. Like my colleague was saying earlier, when you see about those roads, project roads, when the government tell you that they have put in maybe 20 billion CFA to build the road from this city to another city, at the end of the day, when you give to the international companies, because they want to keep their reputation and to move to another country, they will never compromise to the level that when they leave, they find out that this road has been executed, like let's say Arab contractor. Those days, there is a company we call Western Freitag in Cameroon. If they build the road, after 20, 30 years, you will see the road is still intact. But nowadays, when you see those local companies, we have Razel and others, when they do the job, you know that the job is not well done. I cannot accuse them to say that it's their fault. But let us find out what is the real budget allocated to the project, and find out what also the normal budget executed to finish the project. Because the finish of the project determines how well the project will be ending. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we, the people, the country now, we stand and start talking about this poorly executed project because of the corruption, and we want to make sure that any project that has been given to our locality, let us be involved to know exactly how things go. Yeah, because we need also a very proper accounting to all of our leaders, that they can come to the TV to say that this project has been assigned to us and has been given this amount of money, and this is how we pay the contractor to do the job. We have seen it in Tanzania. President Magufuli can come live and call the director of any company who's executing the project and ask him, how much was you paid for this project? And the director will tell you, this is the amount we have been allocated, do you think that this money is enough or no? You can say enough. You say, I need you to execute this project in this so time, but we don't have it in other African countries. You just say here the amount, or you see the signboard, Ministry of this project funding, and the amount is 2 billion, but you are not seeing where is the 2 billion going. At the end of the day, you find out they put couple millions. So we need also as a people to make sure that we talk about it and we put the government to understand that if we want to allocate any project, we want to make sure that there is a sufficient fund at least to execute the project and to make sure that the project can be sustained. Sometimes it's not the execution of the project. The maintenance of the project will play also the role, because you cannot do the budget for a project without have the sustainability, especially that's our roads. When they build them, they just live like this. Normally, we need to have a budget yearly to maintain those projects to make sure that it can last longer. Even when you build a house, if you are not maintaining the house will die. And many African countries have tendency to make those kind of mistakes. When they build the projects here, they forget about it. They don't have a system of maintenance. As my colleague was saying from Canada, whatever project you should, the government put it on the system. They want to make sure that for the next 30 years, there is a system, a complete team that will follow the project to make sure that the project is well executed, well established, well financed, and well controlled. But do we have it in Africa? No, Mr. Leo. Now, let's go back again to sit down to call our leaders, at least to have an understanding that if there is any project we want to do in any region, especially in Cameroon, let us first of all, the people know what is the value of the project and how the project can be executed. We need also to hold them accountable, because the accountability play a very big role in area of development, Mr. Leo. But we don't have accountabilities. You just hear that the ministry has been given so billion. At the end of the day, you cannot account for it. Then back to you, Mr. Leo.
Okay, yes, accountability. Many persons, we've raised this severally, especially at the level of the National Assembly. The budget is being looked into now, and next year, nobody actually tells us that this is how much has been used and what has not been used. This is what's happening. But he is raising an issue of community involvement, holding the companies, those that are supposed to execute these contracts. That is, we live in communities and then you just hear that a project has to pass here. Nobody knows who is executing, and then nobody knows how much is there and how things are moving. Is that not also where we are lacking?
I want to take a step back. Something he said, which is very crucial. I think what is good for the geese is also good for the gander. These companies, whoever is giving them contracts is asking for kickbacks. An international company, I shouldn't say international, even our national companies, and you're accepting to execute a project with that level of kickbacks, you are also guilty as a company. Because where I come from, I've seen project managers, I'm one, I've seen project managers sent to jail for $1,000, which is 500,000 here. $1,000 jailed. So if those companies are accepting that, they themselves are to blame as well, not just government people who are asking for kickbacks. Then the second thing I want to say is this. I think there's also, one of the things that I'm saying is lack of project control, because in every project, there's a system of control of that project in such a way that when it comes to procurement or whatever it is that you need to do, it doesn't go through the project manager. Project manager is the person who's managing the project, but there's a central control team system in place who manages everything from, because I call procurement because that's where the majority of the kickbacks happens. People who do the purchasing and all whatnot in the project, that's where it happens. So I see that in our local projects, from the few that I've looked at, that is non-existent. Then the third one is the project allocation process itself. Project allocation is something that is supposed to be open bidding. Companies come, and there's an allocation team that goes through all the companies and look at their capabilities.
Yeah, but I'm sure that is done.
Well, how is it done? That's the question. It might be done, but how is it done? I don't know. I'm questioning it. I'm not giving data and say that is the course of, but I'm questioning it. Because if a project is, if the allocation process is duly done, the right company for the right project will be selected, not based on kickback or whatever it is. So that's killing us back home. It's killing us.
Yeah, but who validates this project? Because we are complaining that almost all the projects are not well done, but they are validated because before payments are done, someone needs to actually say that this project was well done.
I think, being a Cameroonian, having lived in this country for a while before going abroad, there is an audit team in this country. There's an audit committee, even within the National Assembly. There's
a ministry.
There's a ministry that's supposed to go through all this, audit this project, and means all this is supposed to be done so that we don't find ourselves in this whopping 75% of project failure. And when I said 75% of project failures, we are talking about projects that do not satisfy cost, schedule, and time. We are not even going into those project abandonments. That is a completely different...
Which were never realized.
They could have been realized, but along the way the project was abandoned because the people did not even find the need for that project, like you guys mentioned. When the PMI, that's a Project Management Institute, doesn't even count those ones. They don't count those ones because they don't come back to look at it. Just look at the projects that are currently on the way, but they are not meeting that. So if we even add those project abandonment, I'm sure that Cameroon can be somewhere around 90%, which is affecting the life of the people. So from a political perspective, I'm not a politician, but I know what to obtain in this country, that there is an audit team, a control team, that's supposed to look into what is being done and say, hey, I mean, we saw in Ghana, the Minister of Transport go to the road and stop a Chinese company and say, hey, this is not what it's supposed to be. How are you doing this? They were doing some work that was not good. And moreover, we need to also arm our local project managers with the skills and the training that is necessary for these guys. I'm just talking on a local perspective now because I haven't gone into a lot of details into what happened. But from the people I talk to, my colleagues that I talk to out there, they are not given the tools. A project manager becomes, you know, I don't know, a buyer or whatever it is, just because of, you know, somebody has manipulated his way and gotten the position of project manager, but he's a politician. How does a politician manage a project that's a technical project that's supposed to be managed by a professional, but it's being managed by a politician? So those things are eating up into the value of our projects.
Some people need money to fund party activities. Yes. If you're a politician, you need money now. How do you do politics? Yeah. So, but my question is asking for accountability, monitoring by the local population. We have seen many projects that seemingly are implemented by persons nobody really know. The communities will not know. They will just see people come and walk. Who do you hold accountable for what is happening? I'm talking about a local community.
Mr. Leo, considering that the project we are talking about, if any project is a national project, what should be involved in is not just the community. We know that we have just said here that the community needs to be consulted, but we think expertise is supposed to be what should execute the project. If we allow this idea of, okay, I need to know who is managing the project, I mean, know as in person, except if it is to know his capability, that's okay. But to know his personality is where we might be wrong.
Yeah, but isn't it also because a project, whosoever has a project to implement in a community, knows that whether he or she does it or not, nobody is there. But if they were to know that if they don't execute, the population will hold them accountable.
Yeah. Mr. Leo, that counts in a purely democratic society. Considering
call a spade.
Yes, in a purely democratic society, that counts a lot and it will happen. But in a community like ours where we have a growing, let me use the word, growing baby politics, baby democracy, we necessarily will not see that happening. Though it is very important, because I'll tell you, accountability is very important if we are going to see results. As long as you are executing a project and the people know who you are and they know that you are unable to do it, I'm sure they will stand against you and push you away from it. But if you are such an individual whom they don't even know, they'll just sit and be waiting. And secondly, we have been saying this. You can't see an individual come with a project, just come and is executing, when the people don't even know exactly what they are doing. They will just fold their arms and wait. The end of the day,
we've seen many cases. For example, in Bonaberi out there are roads that you move into the quarters, they'll tell you that this road has been validated,
yes,
money is paid.
Yes.
But the population, who do they really walk up to say this road was handed to so and so contractor who has not done it for 5 years today? We don't even know who was supposed to do it.
Let me just come. There's a road in up here, Japuma, going to the stadium. That road, according to the project plan, had been executed under a budget. I think
alleged, yeah, because
alleged,
you cannot
yes,
prove
this was
that,
alleged execute. And what happened is, of recent, in relation to the Nations Cup, that road was being renovated. But if you go there, you discover that the road was executed to, let's just say, just some few meters or kilometers, and abandoned for years. But it was alleged that it had been executed. Now it is being renovated. Question: was that road being renovated or being constructed?
Yeah, it was abandoned by who?
There was a company that had it. And if it was abandoned, like I just said, who actually validated it that it had been validated done?
Yeah, but this comes back to the accountability. Who do you hold accountable for that?
Yeah, you mentioned something. I want to go back to when I was growing up. When I was growing up, we had this thing we call local cooperatives.
Yeah.
That was an organic success of projects handled by the local population. You had women, if it was cassava they were making, if it was plantains, they would come together, they will make those things, they will do the project, they will sell, and they will come together, they will read the list of what was sold, and everybody will have, that is local accountability. But when you're dealing with national and international projects, he made mention of a statement that kind of just blew my alarm. I can't even say that in front of my colleagues, that locals will just get up and see a signboard that's saying this company is working. And nobody knows anything about it. That is unheard of in the project management world. We've talked about it already, you need to consult the local population. They need some sort of, it might not be an accountability where you come and stand and say, I use 1 million here, I use 200, but just telling them what you're doing, the challenges you're having, is there anything you can do, what the project is all about. That comes back to local government being responsible for their area, which is a complete complex topic that we are not even talking about. But it is true. There is lack of accountability in project management, especially in the local project that I'm saying so far. I can't even have data. You're talking to project managers and people who have been handling that project. Can I see the data on what you've been doing, the project schedule, the project scope, the project performance, and who has been working? There's nothing.
So how do they get the project?
Your guess is as good as mine. Your guess is as good as mine. So it's something that's killing the nation of Africa, Cameroon inclusive. Without this openness in project management, we will be at the same spot for 100 years. So that's one of the things that when we're looking at this data together, and the case of Africa and Cameroon in particular popped up, I said I have to work on this because it's mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. Mr. Gana, are we also facing this because of a lot of politicking, wanting to use projects to make political gains?
Well, at the end of the day, if you use a project for a political mileage, you know that you have already failed, because you plan to lie to your population. There is any project meant for a political mileage, means you are putting it on a specific timing. At the end of the day, the project cannot take long, because many projects has been given to us in Africa during the election. You know that, Mr. Deo. We are going to build this bridge for you. We are going to fix the road. We are going to build the factory. We are going to do this. But at the end of the day, we are not seeing anything. the life we are living now in Africa, we don't need to talk about politics. We need to talk about the real project, how to change people's life, how to better people's life, how to make sure that we can create jobs in our countries. Because at the end of the day, any project, if it's backed up by the political will, is not going to last longer. Today, we are having a lot of graduated in our countries. They don't have a job because the majority of the project or job creation has been completely political. They just promise people to get a vote, but after the vote, you cannot even see them. We know in all the African countries, when you see our MPs or our senators, they spend majority of their time in the capital. They are not even coming to the grassroots to listen to people, to know and to promise them real things. We don't need a political project. We need a real project that can sustain, that can change people's lives, that can develop the country. And those kind of project is needed by the clarity, by the sincerity. We need a project that people are accountable. When the political opponent comes to your area to say that we need to do 1, 2, and 3, let him elaborate that how the budget can be done, which company can execute it, what is the time frame, and if it's not been executed, who is going to be all accountable. Those are the kind of things we need. Because politics has damaged Africa today. You know, people are not even working. Anything they want to do, they think that to become a politician, a professional liar will help them. He is not helping. Is damaging our society. The majority of the problems now we are encountering in Africa is politics. People are thinking just playing the game of politics, but at the end of the day, people's lives are in jeopardy. People are suffering. People are not, at least people are not even surviving now because the difficulty of politics. We need to take politics aside and see that what is our necessity, what is our goal, what do we want to do at the end of the day, Mr. Leo? What project we want to realize to make sure that if this project has properly executed, can improve people's lives. Back to you.
Now, Prof and Mr. Elijah, are we also faced with an issue of competence as far as project implementation is concerned? Some projects are just given to persons because they are our friends or brothers, because they belong to our political party, because they go to the same church with us. Favoritism and not meritocracy here.
Nepotism. Mr. Leo, you asked an answer, not a question.
Okay.
because if you look at it, those who are qualified to have most of these projects, most of the times, because they do not know who is behind, or maybe you do not have any particular connection to the person, you don't end up having a job. You come, apply quite all right. Maybe your application is dumped somewhere and somebody is giving the project simply because he is connected somewhere. And in relation to the landscape, political landscape of Cameroon, I'm speaking particularly of Cameroon, we have a problem with the fact that most of the times projects are handed down based on who knows who. And this particular situation is not based now on meritocracy. There is nothing like competency brought into play. They are looking for how to empower a family member or to empower a community member who can in turn take care of somebody around the family. And as a result of that, we end up with a lot of failed projects. So at the end of the day, we are still saying that most at times politicking is having a very terrible influence, negative influence on the execution of projects in this nation called Cameroon and in many nations in Africa. You might, when you speak at times, when some of us will speak at times, people might want to ask, give us tangible examples of where it happened or where it did not happen. Every year, we vote a budget in this nation, and on voting that budget is based on projects. But when you look at the PIP that is voted, at times there is a PIP of a particular division that is greater than that of 2 regions. The question is, what is in that particular division of a particular region that is greater than the PIB of 2 different regions, or even 3, possibly. You realize that to me is a means on how to pacify a group of persons and make them feel we are part of the ruling team, not practically taking care of the country. Because if we have to take into consideration that, okay, this is a project, let's invest in it and bring in competency, we will not be talking of failed projects. We will not be talking of 75% failed projects. We'll be talking of a nation that is growing. And when you look at trying to compare times, you discover that the level of corruption that we have right now is at its peak compared to when the president came to power. I mean, the present president came to power. You realize that when he came up with moralization and rigor and moralization. But the rigor and moralization seems not to be working, because we have 2 times members of his cabinet in prison for corruption than they are outside. And that is to prove to us that in one way or the other, most of these projects, the money gets into the pockets of individuals. One, it's in fact a late man, I could use his name now because of late, told me something when he was working at the Ministry of Communication. He said at a particular period of time he was the, I think whether it's delegate or whatsoever, the budget that was released to him, he used the budget until he had enough remaining. And so he had to go put it back into the National Treasury. But his minister called him and told him, cut this part and give me, and then you keep the rest. He said that's not the way he grew. He said he went to, he used his name, he said he went to CPC Bali, and there they had trained them not to do that kind of thing. So he had a problem with the minister because he refused taking part of that money, which he executed his projects, and then he had to go put back the money into the National Treasury. I wish that we had those kind of persons again. That I wish we had those kind of persons who are willing to develop their communities, and then when there is leftover, they put it back into the treasury. But we don't have those kind of people. Today we have individuals who are thinking of themselves, who are thinking of their families, they are thinking of their pocket. Me, myself, that's why you see a minister will steal money and keep in his home. That's why you see individuals do terrible things, which at the end of the day, you prove, we can say that patriotism is dead. In fact, there's no more patriotism in leadership. Not to talk just of leadership, it has gone down right to the people, even children right now, where individuals no more think for the good of the community, they think of themselves. So when we talk of development projects, whether they are national or international, we still have these political, use the word crooks, who come in to sap in this money. And at the end of the day, we cannot be talking of competency, because they want to give it to somebody they can control. That is how it ends. They look for somebody they believe that, okay, if I tell him do this, the person will do it, and I'll give you the project. Take the project, because at least I'll end up with much. But the person who is competent enough does not end up having it. And when pressure comes from above, they now look for international organizations or companies and give them the project instead of giving it to the locals. Because we are now looking at an issue where we have engineering schools. They train young, powerful engineers. They come out, okay, and they cannot have.
Yes, we were talking about issues of competence. Is it that we are lacking them, or the fact that they are being sidelined?
Yes, sidelined.
It's twofold. Okay. Let me come back a little bit. I want to appeal to the conscience of Africans and Cameroonians in particular. In 1972, Africa was sitting on $1.1 trillion of resources, oil and gas and all the other money. The same 1972, India had zero in terms of those resources. Today, 2021, if you compare the national budget, the GDP of India and the same African countries, it's a sorrowful story. To come back, India used their locally trained engineers. I'm going to the issue of competence and also corruption at the same time.
Okay.
India used their locally trained engineers in every single project that was either national or international, trained them. Today, Canada, the United States, and Europe, they are hiring engineers and expertise from India to come and work over there in the United States and in Canada. But that's not the case of Africa. To answer your question, I've looked at some of the projects that are scouting through my table. You have a medical doctor being a project manager for road construction. You have a lawyer being a project manager for ICT project. You have a teacher being a project manager for high-rise construction. Where are the engineers in this country? That goes back to the same question you're asking. The engineers are there. I don't think this country lacks engineers. Yeah. There are engineers that are being churned out from universities and technical colleges, but they do not have that political power to get into those positions because of what you just mentioned. When projects are politicized, everybody suffers. I just want to appeal to the conscience of people. When that boy who doesn't get that job, who is trained, resources are wasted. If he goes back to be, I don't know, armed robber, you who got that job, he's going to kidnap you on the way. Everybody pays a price for this. So don't just think that, oh, I got rich, I got this. You pay the price indirectly in one way or the other. So yes, there is corruption. Yes, there's sidelining of the local expertise because of what I've seen. All the engineers, I shouldn't use the word all, that's another statement. A lot of the engineers that I've spoken to, they are actually on the side, but they are not doing what they're supposed to do. Some don't even go close to actually managing the project. They are just there for the name that, okay, you had a project, it was given to you, it was allocated to you. Where was the project manager? A was the project manager. He had an engineer, but he wasn't doing the work. You have politicians managing projects without any expertise. It's a sort of a situation, and I just pray that we will look into our conscience as Africans and not begin to continue in this same road. Otherwise, 100 years, we can't catch up with the rest of the world. I'm sorry to say that.
So the issue is, but why if we feel, let's take 20 years down the road and we saw India doing what you're saying and that we were failing, why could Africans not actually invest?
The lack of political will, Leo. The lack of political will. Magufuli, that our colleague from Uganda just mentioned, how long did it take him to make Tanzania what it is today? Not long. Because that is a man with the political will. He has the political will to do good for the good of the people. The rest are not like that. We lack the political will. Look at Rwanda, what it is today. From a war-torn country to an epitome of beauty in Africa. Why? Because that man has political will. I'm not a politician, but there are some people that are going after Paul Kagame that he's a dictator. I will never speak against that man. Because what he has done for that country, whether he's there for 20 years, he has done magnificently. And everybody's proud of him. So it is lack of political will that we don't have in Africa. And I'm sorry to say that. I just hope that this will change. So that we can see this kind of thing we are seeing in the West happening in Africa today.
Now, many persons are complaining about the process of project location. You have to go through thin and thin to be able to land a project in Cameroon. How do we make the process simpler so that many more competent persons, because once everybody knows that this is going to be held to be able to land a contract, they get discouraged and maybe just those who have their way, who know their way through, are able to do this. How do we lighten that process so that many more competent persons get interested in landing contracts and effectively executing them, Mr. Gana?
First of all, Mr. Leo, we need to make sure that we take out the political game inside the contract. And the second, we need also to take out the political interest. Because at the end of the day, when they want to allocate any contract in many African countries, first of all, there is who determine the kind of business you get in African countries, and that was the worst thing. Sometimes they are not even allocate those contract to the companies that are well equipped to do the job, but they are allocated to the companies that maybe they have share, or they are controlling the company, or they can make a lot of money with these companies. So those difficulties is hindering the development of a common, we call it in East Africa, common Mwananchi, a layman. They are not helping because they are delaying the process, and this process is being involved with a lot of games, and those games that is give for those politician money, because if you cannot give them what they are asking you, they can block the project. Finally, they are not even doing the project for the sake of the population, but they are doing the project for the sake of playing politics. We need also to make sure that there is a committee formed in any country that can veto those kind of things, to make sure that if the company if the company is rewarded the contract and this company deserves to do the contract, we have to give them. They don't need always that you have to get a kickback, because kickback is blocking a lot of contracts, especially in Cameroon. Now, if you don't know anybody in any ministry, you can't get the contract. So for how long are we going to continue? When you see those days, on the 70s and 80s, you see the project that has been executed in Cameroon, you will see that those are the best project. Imagine today in 2021, you can't build a company like CDC in Cameroon. I don't understand. We have more intelligent people, we have more money, more everything, but we can't do those kind of projects that has been done in the 70s and 60s. Why is that? Because those days they are not political game inside any contract. If the company has been awarded the contract, we are 100% sure that the contract will be executed perfectly. But now, the lack of political will is hindering any development in the country, because whatever you want to do, you have to go to many channels, you have to go to many lobbying. And if you did not match the criteria, you are not being awarded the contract. We need to clean this thing out. We need to make sure that the government understands, without having an adequate system that can develop the countries, we are not moving. I can assure you that the biggest project we had in Cameroon has been executed on 70. All those biggest projects that they are alive today. But from 1990s to 2020, any project has been done in Cameroon, at the end of the day, you find out the project is bogus. Why is that? All of this is the political will is not ready to make things work. So we need to make sure that we reduce this political will, make sure that we want to develop the country. Because the way we are going, the population is growing. The project is going down, the demand is growing, but we don't have the response. How are we going to respond it? Today, you know that we are having power problem, we have infrastructure, we have housing problem, we have even agricultural problem. But how do we do now to put those projects and make them work, that we can develop the 10 regions we have in the country? This is the question, Mr. Leo. We need to make sure that we decided to take out the politics on projects, because the more you put politics on projects, the more it hindering the development in the country. Back to you.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Kum Leonard, and everyone in the studio. National and international funded projects failed in Africa because projects in Africa are often late and over budget. Specifically, the projects fail because of lack of competency or knowledge in project management, and also because of corruption, poor policy, planning and implementation, and their complex context. Operational dysfunction, lack of support to ensure long-term sustainability, focal imbalance of failures, insufficient capacity building at local level, failure to ensure availability of sufficient resources, lack of project management, training, and support. Theophilus Tume is writing from Amenda, but Professor Mark Anthony, are some of these projects not also failing because of lack of finances? Projects are given and then finances, especially at a local level.
I am sure that anytime a project is developed, the sourcing is done, and let me use the word, the sourcing is done.
They're hoping to get the money, and at the end of the day, some persons fail to get the money. For example, take the projects for the reconstruction for the Southwest and Northwest.
Mr. Leo, I want to believe...
An estimate was given, and then recently, the commission that is in charge says that they have been able to raise just this amount of what was expected.
Mr. Leo, I want to also believe that a project is not announced when at least a part of the money is not available. Mm-hmm. And project execution is not supposed to be something where I need to give you the money, you do the work. Mm-hmm. If you are coming as a contractor, you should be able to have what it takes to carry the job to a level.
To the end?
Not to the end, to a level. While expecting the sponsor to now push in what they are supposed to push in. And so I think what actually causes this failure has to do with the fact that projects are overinflated. For example, you just mentioned the reconstruction project, which is not only supposed to be sponsored by Cameroon, it has funds that are supposed to come from, I think, is it European Union?
From France, from Japan.
So we cannot say that the budget is not there.
But it's not available.
Mr. Leo, before he gets in and bring in expertise into it, I want to say, if you notice, France has not yet given their own share. It does not mean they will not give it. The other nations have not given. Does not mean they will not give it.
Yeah, but the fact that the money is not coming is also retarding the process. It's like engaging in a project and then the government is not giving money. It's going to...
It will be a crime for us to talk of reconstruction when they are still gone smoking.
No, that's not, that is, I don't want us to get into the politics.
Yes, I am not
we are talking about
it.
project realization, yeah.
Mr. Leo, let's get it off. Look at it. We have been made to understand that over 2-point-something billion had already been used, right? Within 3. I heard something like that, that part of the money meant for the project had already been disbursed and it has been used.
Yeah, but
so in this case...
I'm sure the people are worried that we were expecting to have received this amount, but what we have been able to come up with is just this.
Let me not get into talking.
Also understanding that what we call national budgets are projections.
Yeah, but they're projecting based on facts.
Facts.
You have your taxes, you have the revenue, you know where it's coming from, and you can actually do a project based on projections. To answer your question, a project like that fails right from the beginning because you have not done proper risk analysis.
Yeah.
You haven't counted the risk you are engaging in, engaging in a project where you have not actually analyzed, because project is 3 things: the scope, the time, and the cost. Project failure, sometimes you can have, even you have all the money, but you don't deliver within time, it's considered as a failure as well, from a PMI perspective, even though we don't go into those details when we are talking about Africa. But in that case, Mr. Leo, it goes back to what we've been saying with Prof here, that a project is supposed to be executed within a time frame. You can't, I listened to the project of the Womb Water Project here. You were talking about 60 years or whatever years, can't remember how long it's been. I said that project is already considered as a failure. Who handle a project for forever, that long? So in this case, about the Northwest and Southwest reconstruction, without going to any politics, whatever they intend to do, you can't build a project based on promises of people. You model your risk and see how far you can go into that project and say, it is worth carrying out this project because I don't have the money. You're building a project based on promises. You've already failed on cost. You can't carry ahead that project. So to say that a project fails because of lack of the money is like you've already failed before even starting the project, because that project is not supposed to be engaging. Because you have to come out with a 3 scope, schedule, and time. Before you even start looking at performance or how the project is performing, you have all that in place. If you don't have that, why are you engaging in the project? Except you have done your risk modeling and you feel that you can handle that risk level before you can go ahead.
When you look at the projects for the reunification, the celebration 50th anniversary of the reunification of Cameroon in Boya, there is a project that is not complete.
Yeah.
Opposite Bongo Square.
True.
You're saying that the money was available and it was not completed?
Mr. Lee, I want to say that if they, I want to look at it as,
because almost everybody can see the project.
yes, it's standing there.
Yeah.
That's to make us understand that, it's like we have been discussing here, you see corruption was involved in this issue and a lot of things.
Maybe the money did not come. You are saying corruption,
I don't want to
maybe the money
believe,
did
no,
not come.
I
Yeah.
don't want to believe that the money was not available because that project, if other projects along with that project were executed and that one was abandoned, it means that it had a...
Maybe there was an underestimation of the budget?
Here's something, Mr. Leo. When it comes to project management, if you're taking a project, because you said that the money did not come in,
maybe,
I
don't
don't understand how a project will be allocated to a project manager,
Yes.
and the project manager is accepting a project without the money coming in.
No.
I mean, the project manager himself doesn't understand what the project is supposed to be. Because before you engage in it, when the project is allocated to you, the funds have to be signed. There's a project charter. You're signing a project charter that the funds are there for you to allocate this project.
Okay.
If the other party fails, that becomes a court issue, a legal issue. Right.
Okay. Good evening to everybody. Delani from Yaoundé. This is because the government pretends to be managing funds, pretends to instead embezzle the funds and enrich themselves. We're talking about corruption here, where maybe 1 billion francs CFA may be allocated for a project. And then maybe people steal part of the money. We have people who are in prison today because maybe they mismanage some of these projects. But Mr. Gana, my last question to you will. I want us to go back internationally. Are some of the projects allocated to some nations and the monies are used, diverted for other purposes? Mr. Gana, is it possible? Oh, let me start with him here. Is it possible that money?
Yes.
Yep. Mr. Gana, were you on already?
Well, basically, what you said, if really an international community has given money and the project has been diverted, always there will be a reason why, because you have to give a proper reason why the money is diverted. As I was saying earlier, the majority of the international projects, the project that has funded with the international community come with a condition, Mr. Leo. They are not funding you for free. They are funding you, maybe they want you to change your political system, or they want you a liberalization, or they want you sometime to tighten the belt, or sometime they want you even to go to devaluation. That's why they are funding some of your project. Now, if the project has been really funded and the project has been diverted, now it depends how the countries can come together to justify it, but it's happening. We see a lot of projects from the World Bank sometimes has not ended. Mean that sometimes when we decide to find out how it works, it's come from different stages. It's coming from the top, not even the countries, sometimes from the European Union. Doesn't mean that only as African countries that are corrupt. All of them also, they have their part to play, because there is no way that a project has completely funded, but the project failed or the project has been diverted. But it's happening, Mr. Leo. That is a constant in Africa.
Okay. Yeah.
Back to you.
Yeah, from an international perspective, I want to think that if there's something in project management we call change management, if it's justifiable that a project needs to be changed in scope, because you always have you work within a scope. If you want to change the scope, there is a a formal memorandum of understanding that you can go into with the funders and say, based on this. Maybe like what we've just discussed, maybe you didn't do a lot of a stakeholder engagement, maybe you didn't get the people involved, and then you realize yourself that, oh, this is what I needed to do. And then the people come along. That is possible. But to say a complete diversion without any justification, that is also an aberration in project management. You're not supposed to, for any reason, you're not supposed to do that. And you have to give a justification why there is not. Otherwise, it's still going to fall under what we've been discussing as corruption. Still going to be discussed under corruption. Because every project has a purpose. When that purpose is not fulfilled, it's a failure. Even when you deliver a project, if it doesn't perform according to performance, it's still considered as a failure, because you can actually do a project that's, especially in Nigeria, the case of Nigeria is very prevalent, because I've gone through a lot of their files. You see projects that are duly done, delivered to the people. 1 year after that, project is not meet up to expectation. Everything was done according to specification and design and everything. No problem about that.
What is the problem?
Here's the problem. The problem is that there was not effective, right from the beginning we talked about it, there was no effective strategy, engagement of the populace to understand what their needs are. There's a project in Egypt. I think it's similar to the Mozambique project that I talked about, irrigation. I think the United Nations came, I don't know if it's the World Bank, I can't remember if it was the World Bank, the United Nations Development Project that came and had this irrigation project along the Nile for the Egyptians to produce more crops. So when they did that project, they delivered the project on time and on budget. There was no problem about that. But these locals are not used to using those pumps, and there was no way to maintain it. So it didn't deliver. There was not incremental production along the Nile as a result of that project. So it was considered as a failure. They were using it, but not maximizing it. They didn't need all that. So based on the budget and everything that was done, we consider that project as a failure. Because that money could have been used for something else that would produce more results.
It might have been diverted.
Well, I don't have the data to, I don't have the data to prove that. I stay within my rooms. I don't have the data to prove that. It's possible, but I don't have that data.
How do we get our projects fully executed to the satisfaction of both the funding bodies and the population?
First, I think this political interference in projects needs to be uplifted, where projects are not given out based on favoritism, neither should they be given out based on who knows who. Politics should not actually get to play into it from the perspective of, okay, it is my party that is in power, so the project can only be managed by members of my party. I think that is one of the problems that we have, which needs to be corrected in order to solve that, to see execution of projects. Then secondly, we will go back talking about the fact that locals need to be consulted concerning every project that is meant for them. Because you don't just come into a community and force something on people. When they are consulted, they should be involved in the project. One thing I also want to say is that it is necessary to, even if you want to bring something for them that you think is good for them, you should first of all educate them on it and give them the capacity to handle it after. Because when you are planting that project, we are not just looking at, you need to execute, like you just mentioned the one that was done in Egypt.
You need maintenance, sustainability.
Yes. So to sustain it, you need to train them on how to handle that after. So I think that needs to be done as well.
They need to be accompanied for some time.
Yeah. Even if you are not going to give them the finances, but give them the skill capacity to handle after you are gone. But without that, you would realize that when you are gone, everything is abandoned and it will still be a failed project. So I think it is important to consult the locals. It is important that politics step out of it. Corruption should be, in fact, let it be our African nations need to be very stringent when it comes to fighting and curbing corruption from when it comes to development projects. If not, we will end up in a situation where you might have a good project, the people might even accept it, but the financing ends up with the politicians, where they will cut the money and then end up giving you nothing to execute their project. And at times, they'll even execute the project like we see 1 year after it is gone. Like we have the Boya case, with some of the roads that we have there. So it is important that these things be put into perspective and the right persons given the right projects so that we can have results.
Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all your guests. I like what Mr. Elijah is saying. The bottom line of failure is in African project is embezzlement because there is no proper follow-up. Sakwe Moses is writing from Limbe. We have to end at this juncture. Mr. Elijah from Canada, this is your domain. We hope you're going to continue with the research.
Yes.
How long are you staying?
I'm still going to be around for 2 more weeks.
You're going to Yaoundé?
Yes, I might actually travel to Yaoundé. I'm not going to Boya.
You meet some government officials?
I want to first of all go to the United Nations Development Office, and then from there I'll see if I can see some government people. It's kind of very difficult to get data from government people.
Yeah, but you should also consult some of the MPs. Now, the MPs are the ones, they also carry out micro projects in their areas, but I'm not sure there are projects that are implemented in constituencies, in municipalities, without the knowledge of MPs and the traditional rulers.
That would be a good idea if I can meet some of them, but I don't know how the projects are being carried out at the level of local communities, if they go through the parliamentarians or they say...
No, I said they should know.
They should.
Some of them are even contractors. Eh?
That would be a good idea. I'll get to Yaoundé, I'll probably have to
and some mayors. Because they execute projects now at the municipal levels.
Yes, it will be a good idea. And I hope I can come out with some tangible answers to some of these questions that, that we've been asking here.
Okay. Thank you to Professor for coming.
It's my pleasure, Mr.
Mr. Gana, thank you for participating today.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. It's a pleasure having me. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to all our viewers.
Okay.
Have a wonderful evening.
We want to say thank you to you too, Mr. Elijah, for coming. We are thanking you, Eli, for producing, and Akeba Desmond, and to you, Tabi Tambe Bryant, who is supervising the work we do out here. And to all of you, we can only say, stay blessed. Bye-bye.